Self-service password reset is the ability of users to be able to change their password in the cloud. So on a login screen for, say, Microsoft 365 or perhaps the Azure portal, if the user needs to change their password or they're forced to change their password, they can do it through some web pages. It's important to note this is an Azure AD Premium P1 feature and above, so P1 or P2. So at the free tier, this is not available. When you enable it, which I'll show you how to do in the portal in just a moment, you can enable it for all or specific groups of people. You can indicate which kinds of identification are required in order to change the password. So you don't want anybody to be able to change the password from a web page unless they can prove their identity through an email or a mobile phone, like a text message, or through a set of security questions. Once you turn this on for users, they'll have to register some contact info so that Azure AD has their mobile phone, has the answers to their security questions, or depending on how you can set it up. If you do integrate with on-prem Active Directory, there's an important change that needs to be made in Azure AD Connect, and that's what's known as password write-back. Normally, Azure AD Connect does not write into your on-prem Active Directory, but think through this. If a user changes a password out in the cloud, we do want that password written back into Azure, into the on-prem Active Directory, so that the user's password is the same in both places. Once that is turned on for Azure AD Connect, you can enable or disable it through SSPR settings in the Azure portal. Some organizations choose not to configure self-service password reset for this very reason, because they don't want Azure AD writing back into their on-prem directory. But that's a decision an organization can make. Let me show you in the portal how you could set this up. So first to note here in my Azure Active Directory is that my license is not Azure AD free, it's Premium P2. If you set up an Azure AD tenant, you can enable Premium free for 1 month. So if you're testing things out in the portal, you can try this yourself as well. I'll scroll down to password reset and notice that none is what's selected currently. If I want this enabled, I can turn it on for specific groups or for all groups. If I turn it on for specific groups, I can pick a group and you save this setting. And then you go to other blades to configure. So authentication methods, how many methods are going to be required in order to reset a password? Your choices are 1 or 2. And then these are the available methods the user could use. Commonly done things are mobile app code, mobile phone or email, perhaps an office phone if you have those stored for all users. If you enable security questions, you must specify how many questions the user will be required when they first register their info, and then how many questions will they be required to answer when they want to reset their password. And so selecting questions is a process of just picking. There's several predefined questions. You could choose many of these. Add your own custom questions if you like. When you get this all ready, you can save your changes. Other settings here that you might want to look into for registration, typically you would require users to register the next time they sign in after you set up SSPR, and then you can ask them to reconfirm their authentication on a schedule. Default is every 6 months. You can be notified. Do you want to notify users when their password is reset? That could be a nice security feature in case someone didn't actually authorize the password change. And then whether or not you want all admins to be notified when any admin resets a password. That could be a nice security thing to turn on as well. Under customization, you can specify your own help desk link. So if a user's having trouble resetting the password, they could perhaps contact a company portal or send an email. And then under on-premises integration, this is where you can enable or disable password write-back. It has to be turned on in Azure AD Connect, but then you could temporarily stop it here or enable it here as needed.